Our verse today is Acts chapter 14, verse 27. And when they arrived and gathered the church together, they declared all that God had done with them and how he had opened a door of faith to the Gentiles. In Acts chapter 14, verse 1 to 18, Paul and Barnabas, after healing a crippled man from birth, attracted the attention of the crowds and their temple priests. They took Paul and Barnabas to be representatives of their gods, Hermes and Zeus. They were determined to offer sacrifices to these men. Paul and Barnabas tried to convince them that they were ordinary human beings like them and that a miracle had been done through the power of God. The people would not listen to them. At that point, some Jews came from Antioch and Iconium, and they persuaded the crowds, and they stoned Paul and dragged him out of the city. But Paul, helped by the disciples, went with Barnabas to Derbe. They continued to preach the good news in other towns, and eventually they returned to Antioch, where they were initially sent out on the mission. Today's verse recounts their report to the community on their return to Antioch. They gathered the church together and declared all God had done with them. To gather the church together to report because the church had commissioned them for the mission. Paul and Barnabas were accountable to the church that sent them on the mission. Although they had founded the Christian community in Antioch, both men were not above the community. They were at the service of the community and must report to the community. How often do our Christian leaders report their activities to the Christian community they serve? The content of their report was twofold. First, what God had done with them. This statement can be understood in two complementary ways, namely, what God had done for them and what God had done through them. God had used them to reach out to the Gentiles, but God had also done a lot in their lives by preserving them, saving them from death, and bringing them back safely to Antioch. Second, they told the community how God had opened the door of faith to the Gentiles. If you remember, Paul had said that he had a special mission to the Gentiles, just as Peter had a mission to the Jews. You can read Galatians chapter 2 verse 7, Romans 11 verse 13, Acts chapter 9 verse 15, and Ephesians chapter 3 verse 8. The Gentiles are the people of the non-Israelite nations. Hence, we see Paul preaching and working in many Greek territories. Although there were Jews in those places, Paul did not limit himself to preaching only to the Jews. He saw himself as a missionary, especially to the non-Jewish peoples and nations. Consequently, Paul went into territories where the message of Jesus Christ had not been preached. How many pastors and priests are happy to go to difficult places for primary evangelization today? What about you? How confident can you speak about God to those you consider hostile to our Christian faith? Paul leaves us an example. Lord, give us the spirit of Paul and Barnabas to preach the gospel message wherever we find ourselves. Amen. God bless you. Have a lovely day.